This week, the Cardinals face another AFC East opponent in the Bills, and DeAndre Hopkins made a hell of a catch to win the game for the Cardinals. And this might be some recency bias, but I want your takes on this. Is DeAndre Hopkins the best wide receiver in the NFL, and why?
Rav, you can go first on this one if you want to. I took the first step on the last topic, so I'll let you go first on this one.
I think we're probably all going to have the same answer. Me and you definitely probably are. I don't know if Joel's going to have the same answer, but I've been saying since last year, I think DeAndre Hopkins has been the best receiver in the league for a minute. And I think if you, stats, I think if you look at it from just watching receivers play, like you put the best receivers out there and you watch them play, there really isn't a weakness DeAndre Hopkins has. He can play deep, he can play in the slot. So, and there's nobody that can guard him in the league. And I think this year with a quarterback like Kyler Murray, I think he's proven that he's one of the best. I mean, he's played with pretty bad quarterbacks throughout his years, aside from Deshaun Watson and Kyler Murray. So he's played with horrible quarterbacks, and he still was able to put up pretty amazing numbers. So I would go DeAndre Hopkins is probably the best receiver in the league right now.
I'm also, because I don't know what Joel's going to say about this, but I'm going to agree with Riv. And like Riv said, I've been saying this since last year. I could pull up the text message receipts for you. I know I haven't been on the podcast long enough to have my take on the podcast, but I've been saying this for a year now. And, you might not be able to see it in the numbers, but you look this year and he's got 67 catches, 861 yards, which are both second in the NFL behind, ironically enough, Stephon Diggs, who would have had the game-winning catch had it not been for DeAndre Hopkins. And he co-leagues the lead in first downs and leads all receivers in broken tackles. And I think that those numbers give you an idea of his wide skill set. Like, he can do it all. And a lot of it comes down to eye test too. I watched him in person last year against the Jets in a fourth quarter drive coming from behind. I was sitting there saying, DeAndre Hopkins is getting the ball here. And against double coverage, he caught 3 passes on the final drive, including a ridiculous touchdown catch to win the game. It's like in basketball, you say it all the time in a close game. You know where the ball is going, but you just have to stop it. And I feel like DeAndre Hopkins has that it factor. You can know the ball's going to him and not be able to stop it, as you saw on Sunday. And I think another funny thing to note, and it hurts DeAndre Hopkins' numbers almost more than any other receiver in the league. Last week against the Dolphins, they had 4 penalties against Xavier Howard, 3 of which were accepted, and that resulted in 42 penalty yards. They were all pass interferences against DeAndre Hopkins. So that's 42 yards that he didn't get credit for, and he's just so difficult to guard. You take into account the amount of times that he's been interfered with that he hasn't gotten the yardage for. I think he's the toughest guy to guard in the league. He has the size, the speed, the route running. You could hit him in the short game. He could break tackles and break it long. You could hit him deep downfield. He's got the hands and can create the separation to make those catches. I think he's the best all-around receiver in the league.
In early 2020, there was a poll conducted by coaches, players, and GMs that voted on who the best wide receiver in the league is. Hopkins was third. First was Mike Thomas. Second was Julio. I'm pretty sure it was one of those, but Hopkins was third. Right now, we're in a situation where we haven't seen too much of Julio. We haven't seen too much of Mike Thomas because he's been hurt. But this is one of the few years where I feel like the best wide receiver in the NFL is an open debate. It can be a lot of guys, and you wouldn't be wrong if you mention a lot of guys. For me, that one guy is not DeAndre Hopkins. The best wide receiver in the NFL right now is Devonta Adams. When you look at what he's done in Green Bay, for one, he's the only wide receiver in the NFL that is averaging over 100 yards per game receiving. He's averaging 106 per game. Hopkins is at 95. Devonta Adams is tied first with Adam Thielen with 9 touchdowns in the league right now. And I also got to note that he's played 7 games. Hopkins has played 9. If Adams plays 2 games, he's number 1 in receiving in the league right now.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the running back debate that we had, I think, 2 episodes ago. Dalvin Cook has been far and away the best running back in the league this year, in my opinion, but I don't think he's the best running back in the league overall. I think that Devonta Adams has been the best wide receiver in the league this year with the numbers he's put up, and him and Aaron Rodgers, they're the deadliest combo in the league by far this season. But overall, Personally, I think it's DeAndre Hopkins, but I could see an argument for Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. Even if you want to make a case for Michael Thomas, I could see that, even though we haven't seen two of those guys that much this year, like you mentioned. I don't know that Devonta Adams is there yet, but he has definitely creeped into the top 5 this year. He was on the outside looking in coming into this year, but I think he has now moved into the top 5 this season.
I think Devonta Adams is there.
I disagree. I think Devonta Adams has been in top 5 receiver for a year or two now. I think he hasn't had a 1K year yet, but you have to remember he's been hurt in a lot of his seasons. He's been missing out on a lot of his seasons. So I would say of skill set alone, Devonta Adams is definitely top 5. I wouldn't mind you putting up there. You can make the argument for Stephon Diggs being the best receiver this year, but I think for consistency purposes and skill set, I would pick DeAndre Hopkins just because he can do everything and he's been the most consistent receiver in the league.
Devonta Adams had a 1K year in 2018, 1,286 yards. Yeah.
One of the most impressive things for me this year out of Devonta Adams is you've kind of been seeing out of him what I said about DeAndre Hopkins has done in his whole career is he is the number one guy undebatably on that Packers team, and there's not really a second receiver to complement him. You know, you could say Valdez-Scantling, but he's up and down like a roller coaster. So Devonta Adams has been the one consistent there, and still nobody can stop him. So that's why I said for me, he's creeping into that conversation. I didn't have him. For me, coming into this season, I had Julio, Mike Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins on a separate level from any other receiver in football. Now, this season, with what I've seen out of Devonta Adams, with the circumstances around him and what he's been able to do, he's creeping into that conversation of it's not a top 3 anymore. Now it's the top 4.
Well, no doubt about it. Hopkins is amazing, and he caught the game-winning pass over Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, and Tre'Davious White. All 3 of those guys are the best defenders on Buffalo's defense, and he caught it over all 3. So that was an insane catch, and if, like I said earlier, I think the best wide receiver right now is up for grabs, and if you have Hopkins in it, I can't argue it. That's a good take.
I think Hopkins, Adams, Diggs all have a case this year, so I don't think either answer would be necessarily wrong. I just think it's a preference at that point.
Hey, what's up, guys? You just finished watching a clip of the Pick a Side podcast. My name is Joel Moran.
My name is Jack Barteck.
My name is River Brown.
And we are your hosts for this podcast. We want to thank you guys for watching the clip. Like, subscribe, and comment, and share if you would care to, because it helps us grow. We're trying to make this a full-time thing. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for supporting, and see you next time.